My name is Ramesh Garapati. I work at AT&T and I'm also part of Indo-American Community Services National Executive Team and also part of IACS Dallas team. On behalf of Indo-American Community Services, we would like to welcome you all to a pleasant evening with lots of rain. We are honored to have here with us today our esteemed speakers, Balasubrahmanyam, Chief Digital Officer of AT&T, Syed Ali Razn, he's Chief Digital Officer of Apergy, Jude Rajan, he's an executive in federal government, Sunil Bondalapati from Linux International, he's a director in Linux International, Dr. Shri Rajan, who is actually part of UT Dallas. We would also like to welcome Ashish Julka, Senior Vice President at Tech Mahindra, and Srinivas Madhipudi, who is the CIO of Aero Exchange and other technology leaders who are here this evening. We know and appreciate how busy all of you are in your daily schedules, so thank you so much for taking time to attend this event. So just to let you know, IACS is formed with two different goals. One, increase the diversity in workforce. And the second, serve as a very solid platform to connect different professionals so they help each other out when there is a true need. Talking about diversity, can you all look around the room for a second? We barely have like 4 women in the room. First, we need to increase the diversity in the IACS attendees. That is going to be our #1 goal. So we are hoping that all the women who are here will go back, act as ambassadors for IACS, and make the next event a lot more colorful. And men also. Men definitely, yeah. To all of you who attended today, I just wanted to say a couple of things. When you walk out of here tonight, besides learning something from our esteemed speakers, if you did not make at least 3 new friends, then your trip here on a beautiful Saturday evening is wasted. And also, more importantly, you probably wasted several dollars buying those nice looking jackets in Men's Warehouse. Renting, okay. New business model, right? So we have representation from about 74 companies today. So if you look at the cross section of number of people who attended today, they all are coming from about 74 different companies. So as most of you know, we have sold out like 2 weeks before today. And guess which company has the most number of people attending? AT&T. Oh my gosh, AT&T. And I got to confess, guys, it has got nothing to do with me, and Bala, it's all your charm. So 11 participants from AT&T, and now let me take the honor of introducing you to someone who you may have never met before. Everyone knows Best Buy, right? Anybody didn't shop in Best Buy? Okay, there is one person who raised his hand. We're going to send you a Best Buy gift card. A Bloomberg article once said Best Buy should have been dead, but is thriving in the age of Amazon. We would have thought Best Buy would have survived in an Amazon age. Anybody would have thought about it, right? Nobody thought Best Buy would survive in the age of Amazon. But with price match guarantee, customer obsession, and quick delivery through omni-channel strategy, Best Buy has transformed itself 360 degrees. And one of the key individuals who is responsible for the transformation of Best Buy is here with us today. He recently joined AT&T as Chief Digital Officer in the Digital Retail and Care Organization. In this role, he leads efforts transforming the digital experience of the various AT&T channels. As you know, a lot of you interact with stores, you interact with call centers, you interact online, and you also interact with AT&T from your in-home comfort of your home. So all these different channels, Bala is going to be responsible for the digital strategy of AT&T. His 24 years of career spans a breadth of experience and accomplishments from Best Buy and T-Mobile. He holds an MBA from Duke University and MS in Electrical Engineering from Oklahoma State University, University of Oklahoma. And with all these feathers in his cap, he does a few things in his spare time, if he has any. So one of the most important things he does is he loves Seattle Seahawks. So all of you Cowboy fans here, watch out. We got a competitor in town right here in Dallas and right here in this Marriott. So don't say anything bad, okay? Second, he's a runner, and we will find out pretty soon if he's a half marathon runner or a full marathon runner. And then third, he collects a lot of watches, if you didn't know that. So one of these days, I think he's going to show us all his watches. And then number 4, and most importantly, last but not least, he proudly says he's an unpaid Uber driver for his wife and his kids. With that, I would like to welcome Balasubrahmanyam, Chief Digital Officer of AT&T, to kick us off with his keynote.
Good evening, everyone. I think he spoke way too much about me than I actually knew it. And I don't know who gave him all this information about my watches. I have to talk to my assistant and see what's going on. It's absolutely an honor for me to actually be here. Thank you for IACS for inviting me. When I came in to AT&T, I think one of the first weeks I had an email from Ramesh saying, hey, you should come and actually speak. At that time, like, sure, why not? And then after that, I completely forgot about it. And then almost a month back, I started looking for what IACS does, and it's truly phenomenal. The focus on trying to drive diversity and actually bringing people along, especially the Indian community, I think it's actually pretty powerful. And also connecting what we do as Indians as well as what we do in the American community is also pretty impressive. So I'm humbled and honored to be here. This is my problem. I always speak like this. And I'm also more willing to help in any way I can. I think in my career, after we've done, and I can walk you through kind of in terms of what I've done. So my goal coming to Dallas is more for giving back to the community. So I hope that I can do it in a small way for all of you. With that said, let me actually give you a quick 2 minutes of my personal life. My first ever flight I took was from Chennai to Oklahoma. I had a master's opportunity to go to Berkeley and Oklahoma, and I chose Oklahoma. So if you think about my career decisions at that point, that's how my life starts. Because I didn't know the difference, and of course, if all of you are from India, like your parents say, you go here, and that's what you go. That's what I did. That's where I started. He already talked about the unpaid Uber driver. I'm not good at creating PowerPoint, so all the credit goes to my chief of staff for this one, and then all the good advice which Ramesh gave me. So this is a new thing in AT&T. You have to learn a lot of PowerPoint skills. I write white papers, it's a lot easier. So I'm learning the PowerPoint skills right now. And if you don't know, we actually have a complete team which does PowerPoints for you, which is all new to me. The thing which I like the most is if you have complex problems, and how do you build powerful teams. I think one of the fascinating things to do is not what you do, but really you kind of stand back and see others be successful. To me, that's one of the biggest things to do. And frankly, if you think about Best Buy, and I will kind of weave kind of my story as well as technology as well as digital transformation for you. Hopefully the next 20 minutes is not boring. And then building really powerful teams. So I think sometimes there is something more about the power of more than one, and then it's not about your idea versus others, but how do you really create a machine that is absolutely is able to execute. When I joined Best Buy, I had 12 people work for me. And after that, we started building a team, which is now about 1,000 or so. But more importantly, we've been able to drive online growth, which is about 24% every single quarter for like 6 years in a row, right? So I think, and this not happens because of one person. This actually happens because you have this enormous amount of energy in the team, and then how do you actually build that? That's kind of my passion, and frankly, that's what I'm hoping to bring to AT&T. Can you go back one more slides? Who's got the slides? Sorry, thanks. Quickly on career path, I actually started in Dallas, believe it or not. I went to Oklahoma, came here, started in Ericsson, down in Richardson, and Arapahoe and Browser. And then I worked all over the country. I only stayed here for briefly 18 months And then I moved to OmniPoint, which is in New Jersey. Then I moved to T-Mobile, which is in Seattle. I was in Seattle for 12 plus years. And at that time, I was an engineer by trade. And I grew to be a manager. I was working on wireless data networks. Then I became a director, a vice president. And at that time, I actually also started running technology and strategy. I took a brief, I did an executive MBA at the Duke University at the business school. And then I started to connect how technology and business, they all connect together. I think one of the learnings for me, and I can tell you personally, is as a person of an Indian origin, there is a traditional bias towards this person is very good in technology, you're a technical person, it's not about business. And I don't know if you've encountered in the career, I encountered a lot of bias like that. I think one of the things for me is, hopefully what we can all show is there's a lot of esteemed business people here, people who have actually been successful, not just in technology, but really using technology for business purposes. And I think it's important for the community to be able to kind of talk about it, be proud of it, so that you don't get pigeonholed in one area. And what I did in OmniPoint was also kind of take this back to T-Mobile, and I was involved in acquisitions. I did a couple of startups in the middle. And then I actually went to Best Buy. I had an opportunity to go work for Google as the vice president, but I chose Best Buy not because of first my wife was thinking, am I crazy? And we didn't know where Minneapolis was. But it's more about, can you do something meaningful with your life, and can you keep about 100,000 jobs intact? Because at that time, Best Buy was going through some really bad trouble. Stock was about $12. And we had 4 companies, private equities, trying to break the company. Effectively, we would have lost over 100,000 jobs. So that was when I actually went in. Today the stock is around $75, $77, and I left about 5 months back to join AT&T. So what do I do at AT&T? I have 2 goals. One is to transform the online experience, and the other one is to drive digital capabilities or transform the digital capabilities. And my rest of my conversation, hopefully it's a conversation for you, I want to kind of weave in 2 things for you. Number one is, how do you really think about being a technologist and leverage technology? But what are the things you can do for people? Because at some time, it's really important to connect and connect the chasm. I do see AI to be one of the big challenges coming in front of us, but it's critical that we have a responsibility for the society to make sure that we're able to connect technology and people together. That's going to be pretty important for us to do. And you see a lot of CDOs here. One of the things I would say is like not focus too much on eliminating people, but really think about creating value with the people using technology. So if you go to the next slide, everybody talks about technology and digital transformation. I've had at least 7 to 8 calls in the last 2 months about CDO and saying, hey, there's a new CDO, there's a digital transformation. I've met with at least probably 15 companies in the last 6 months to talk to them about what digital transformation is. And one thing I can tell you, it is very different for different people. For Asian Paints, I don't know if you know Asian Paints from India. So they are one of the best digital transformations you can find in the world right now. Phenomenal. And they had talked about innovating operations. So then you have Geo, which is a phenomenal story. I had a chance to speak to Matthew Oman. I think he's from in Dallas. And he's running their network operations. And the Geo's fundamental focus was flip an all-voice Indian network to all data network. So they were thinking about digital transformation. So you can kind of go down the line. And when you talk about CDO, and I'm sure that Ali will share his point of view too, it's like it really depends on the company. It really depends on what problem you're trying to solve. So typically, as leaders, you have to think about what problem you have to solve. I'm sorry, I have a really bad cold, so I may have to pause and then drink some water before I go. So if you look at the next slide, what does it mean and why is it important for the business? This is a very interesting time. I believe we all are actually here because one, the compute capacity and the storage capacity is growing exponentially by leap and bounds. The cost of compute and storage is coming down. The ability for systems to be able to work in an algorithm base is increasing. So a lot of things which we thought is very human-centered or human-powered is becoming more technology-powered and AI-powered. So when you think about transformation as it relates to business, my ask is think about three things. Number one is the experience, what experience are you trying to solve for the customer? And we have to be obsessed about it, because if you use technology to simply solve business purposes without really understanding the customer you're serving, then this becomes a good technical work, but really not a digital transformation. Transformation has to help fundamentally change the way we're working, and that's the first thing we need to think about. The second one is you have to, can you go back please, sorry. This enable the employee and the customer relationship. One of the biggest things we have to make sure is don't think about eliminating employees all the time, because it's impossible to bring them on board. You have to get them on board and make sure that there is value for the employees. So when I come into AT&T, I had about 2,500 people, and their only job was to make sure that the e-commerce systems, when they break, they take care of it. Now coming in, I was almost like stunned, because you fix the e-commerce system, you don't have 2,500 people working there, right? So anybody from Verizon, you can't take it back to your company now, whatever I say. So this is an example of, now what do you do with this 2,500? So next year I can simply fix it, but what happens to 2,500 people now? What do they do? So I think when transformation happens, we have to think about a lot of these things. When you think about automation, there is a human component to it which is very important. And I personally worry about it a lot. I worry about the people, and I worry about like what happens when these things come in, because we have to be thoughtful. Otherwise you have this incredible amount of people who are there who basically don't do a lot. And then now what happens? So it's something we have to think about, and I urge all of you to consider that too. The third one is, I think typically everybody knows about Scrum, everybody talks about Agile. My humble opinion is, I think the success of a transformation and success of a company's transformation is not about technology being agile. All of you probably know, if you're technologists, you know about Agile, Scrum, Kanban, and everything else, right? But the problem we have is the business is not agile. You may have a person who's dying to do Agile. The business person comes in and says, I have one idea. What's the point of having an Agile team? So what I'm driving within the organization is business agility. To drive at least 50 ideas to come through, 20 ideas, 100 ideas, depending on what product teams you have. Then you can have an agile execution organization or a development team. But the agility has to be on the business side. You keep innovating all the time, and you do this test, measure, iterate, and then you actually build it, keep continuing the cycle all the time, so that you can create an agility within the business, and you don't have to guess anymore. You don't have to hit this big, great idea. You basically use the customer and the employees as your guinea pigs, so to speak, or co-developers, and you keep doing that. And that's basically what we did at Best Buy. If you ask me what was the digital transformation, the biggest thing I did was we went from 4 releases a year to 40,000 feature releases a year. And I can't tell you which one was successful. It's purely what was successful for different people. But more important, the culture of the company changed, where nobody was worried about trying to have a good idea or a bad idea. Everything was an idea, we put it in front of the customer, we test them, and we scale them. So, the next one, please. So, I'll give you a quick high level on what are we trying to do with AT&T. This is kind of my idea about digital transformations, AT&T. So I always talk about why, what, and how. Why do we do what we do? What are we going to do? And how are we going to do it? So here, for AT&T, my goal is to see if we can build compelling customer experiences for customers, and then create an empowered environment for our employees. So I think it is very important for us, and we will actually start to fix how we will create meaningful experiences for our customers. We will change the way we sell to our customers, and we will also expand what we sell. So the most operative word for me is, I don't want AT&T to be a person which provides a BOGO offer and an iPhone, but really does it actually help you with your needs, not just based on products and systems, but a vertically integrated services offer. So to me, I'm going to build a platform. So if somebody wants a health need, AT&T is able to create an ecosystem so that can serve your need rather than just provide you the systems and let you figure it out. It's a fundamental pivot for the company and really starting to think about what does the customer need and how does AT&T solve that problem. So we are looking at very solid verticals, how we do it. You know, how I consume direct TV and AT&T is completely different than maybe somebody else. How do we actually start to bridge those things so it's relevant to the customer, not to AT&T? And today we speak to ourselves. We are a very inside-out company. We will decide what we want. We tell the customer, we assume they buy it. And I want to flip the model and say we have been outside-in company. The customer decides what they want, and then AT&T has to be able to change our entire structure and be able to be flexible to be able to drive that forward. And that flexibility comes from digital, right? So that's the nuance of a digital transformation. Does it make sense so far? So I have 2 more slides, so don't worry. So there are four big things which we're talking about. One is about leadership. It comes from, the leadership has to be consistent. So when I talk to Randall or John Donovan, it's very clear, our CEOs, very clear that we are aligned in terms of how we want to drive this forward. And in fact, there is one of the reasons I joined was I was very worried about coming to AT&T. I said no for like 9 months. And then finally when I talked to them, I asked them 2 things. It's like, are you 100% committed? And are you willing to be uncomfortable with the pace at which I'm going to introduce the change? And will you let me do it, because I cannot come in with some siloed ability to drive it. It has to be broader, and you have to feel uncomfortable. If you don't feel uncomfortable, then I'm not doing my job. So you have to be, and will you be willing to let me take you to the places where you are going to feel uncomfortable? Both of them, yeah. And then it's about the same thing, build, test, measure. We're very product centric. In fact, we've already changed the way we work at AT&T. We've gone from a very standard, business creates some, business requirements document, then it goes and gets thrown over the wall, then some technology team takes it, then it works it. So we've already changed it now. So we have a combined business, UX, and the product teams. We build capabilities. And our goal is to go from, we do probably, we want to go into weekly sprints, so we are actually releasing 52 weeks next week. So we're just starting to make the pivot right now. And we're obsessed about culture. We will become data-driven. And when I say data-driven, it's important that we look at the right data, because one thing I've noticed in AT&T is all of a sudden you have the same data and it tells you 2 different stories from 2 different teams. I always wonder, how can you make the data make all these things? So we're trying to make the fundamental change. If you say this is the data, this is what it means, then don't interpret it as how it actually starts to change. And then we're also trying to get the 4 areas I'm focused on, say 5, is social. So really looking at how do we start to expand the social, very focused on mobile, because that's how most of you consume your data now. So what can we do? And of course we are a mobile company, so we have to be able to drive that. Automation is a cliche, but I'm more looking at automation from how do you leverage it to drive business processes. A lot of things, automation is done in a silo. You automate one workflow, but I'm looking at taking a business process and automating the whole thing. But more importantly, it doesn't limit to an online or an offline. It's really about what the customer workflow is, and we're automating the whole workflow. And then cloud, of course, all of you know about it. And more importantly, I think the last one is important, ecosystem based. So I'm very open in looking outside and thinking about what can be done outside. There is, if you look at the last acquisition for Best Buy, they acquired a healthcare company called Great Call. I don't know if you saw it. I actually was working on it. And then our vision was, Best Buy needs to be not just about providing just a place for people to buy products, but how do they get them to go from a product company to a services company? It's kind of the same thing I'm trying to do with AT&T. Can we get into the healthcare business, but do it with a bunch of partners? So what I want to build is a platform for IoT, which I think Ali is going to talk about IoT, and really bring everybody in and actually be the platform provider. So if somebody wants to have a healthcare vertical, by all means use AT&T. We have about 150 million subscribers right now, including like business as well as the On the consumer side, so every third person you will meet is an AT&T subscriber in one way or the other. How do I actually take this and make it into a platform so anybody else can build vertically integrated services? That's where we are going. And our goal is we will create meaningful experiences, and then we will start fundamentally changing the way we are doing. So that is the number for digital transformation. Now keep in mind, we have to do this when we have around 400,000 employees who have the working. Everybody I meet is at least 25 years there. In fact, people are so proud that their parents work for AT&T, and the kids are now going to work for AT&T. So the amount of things which I have to change is massive. And then I say the operating thing about that's why I'm not doing it. The entire AT&T company has to do it, and I just have to step back and let the organization change go on. So it's fun, I think. So if you look at the next slide, here's what I would say. If you think about digital transformation, I was thinking about what I can leave you with. And I have 4 things to talk to you about. Number 1 is focused on technology, but focus on business. I think it's really important to make sure you're very clear about the problem you're trying to solve. And always ask that question. As technologist, one problem, when I was young and when I was young in my career, I never really focused on what business I was actually in and what problem I was solving. When I was in T-Mobile, I put my head down and we basically built a data platform, really without understanding what exactly are we building the data platform. And we were so naive when Steve Jobs came to T-Mobile to talk about the iPhone. We told him to go home because we told him that nobody wants a phone without a keyboard. So yes, we are dumb. But it's how we go, and look at where T-Mobile is right now in terms of what we were able to go through. So really, my ask is, think about business, think about technology, think about the value prop of how technology can be used for business. It's a very important thing to do, and that's the divide you have to connect. Customer experience matters. It's really important. You have to obsess about it. In the age where you have so much technology available, the differentiation for a company is almost infinitesimal. You have a cloud, I have a cloud, everybody has a cloud. You have automation, I have automation, yours could be infinitesimally more bigger than mine, but who cares? It's not going to make a difference. What matters is what happens with the customer experience. And more importantly, what happens with the employee experience. So my ask is obsess about those. That's going to be really important, because if you try to make sure you are blindly focused on creating technology and just looking at nothing but shareholder value, you will lose in the long run. And that's the biggest learning I had from Best Buy, is you've got to focus on customer experience. Think big and act small. I mean, don't do 5-year programs. In this day and age, nothing works. So my ask is, have a big vision, right? But start today and do something in 2 weeks, measure it, pivot, because that's going to work, and that's foundation of Agile, but do it on the business side. Don't try to create stories which is going to be like a 3-year program, 5-year project. With the pace at which technology is moving, I don't know what 3-year project is really going to be successful without having 10 different iterations. But have a North Star, have a goal, and make sure that everybody understands this is where you're going. But don't have the hubris say that's the only vision, because I changed my strategy. I've changed it 4 times already because it's very tough to come in and really understand where AT&T is, and that's something we've been able to do. There's nothing wrong in it, because you should be able to do that. But allow the flexibility to go forward. And the last one I will say, which is what the IACS is helping to do, you have to get your network to be expanded. And one thing I would recommend you do is actually talk to people who don't work in tech, if you're in tech. My biggest thing I've actually gotten is when I spoke to doctors. And my wife is a pharmacist, and it's the most unbelievable, humbling feeling you can get when you want to talk about a vision about digital transformation to my wife, who's a pharmacist, and she tells you, I don't really know what you're trying to say. So you just get this complete grounding of your life, so that when you talk and really get to the essence of what you want to do, it fundamentally makes a difference for you. And you will learn a ton when you talk to somebody different. And then that's because, like I said, technology is so pervasive. What I talk to Nali, most likely we will talk about the same thing. It'll be consistent, and we may be in 2 very different fields. So since it's all getting to be almost like a fabric of technology, learning from others from a different will absolutely matter. And the fact we have 72 companies here, it's like the biggest thing you can actually get. That's the power of networking. I don't have the last one. Have fun. I think it's going to be fun for the next few decades in terms of what you do, and I wish you the best. Thanks for the opportunity.
And hi everybody, my name is Balu Kadiala. No, I didn't make that up just to impress Bala. Actually, my name is Balu. I am the founder of School Rush, but I'm also a consultant on the side. That was really insightful conversation. I hope you all appreciate it, that those tidbits and nuggets of digital transformation. I mean, that's something we read about every day. Bala mentioned there's several people in the room here. I know some of my own friends that lead digital transformation in their own companies. Some things that struck out for me, I was making notes as Bala was talking about. I'm just going to read them out. Hopefully they'll resonate more with you. Start talking about meaningful business transformation. I think as techies, all of us have a challenge. We have took so much fun with technology, making it meaningful, people-oriented. The bias, which is one of the main reasons I think IACS was founded, why I'm passionate about IACS and the other IACS volunteers. We believe in diversity, and this crowd has first-hand experience with bias. Digital transformation depends on the company and the context. That made a lot of sense to me. The chasm he talked about, I think all of us, if you have a child, we're all technologists, most of us here, we know the challenge that technology brings to our own kids. I have a 11-year-old, 9-year-old daughter, and how challenging it is to, keep them away from the screens more than they need to be. Or I have a nephew, and keeping her away from Snapchat, right? So there is a little bit of a chasm. I think hopefully we can all, that's at least what it resonated to me. The business agility, automation is a cliche. Cloud, everybody has one. Yours may be bigger than mine. That was pretty neat. So anyways, I have the pleasure of introducing Syed Ali Razn as our next speaker. Digital transformation in a completely different space, oil and natural gas industry, which most of us probably don't relate or equate to a very digital company. Syed Ali serves as the Senior Vice President of Apergy and Chief Digital Officer. Ali most recently served as the President of Dover Energy Automation and part of Dover's Energy. It's a position he's held since 2016. Prior to joining Dover Energy, Ali was with Honeywell Process Solutions as Vice President and General Manager, Advanced Solutions, General Manager, Advanced Solutions, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, General Manager, Americas. So Ali grew up in Karachi, Pakistan, but his wife is from Mumbai and has family in Hyderabad. So a lot of us, I know, I spent a lot of time in Hyderabad. So looking forward to, he's got 3 boys. He doesn't show his age. A 27-year-old is about to get married. He told me, cautiously, don't announce it. I don't want everybody here coming to that wedding and get overwhelmed, which is very gracious of him to think. We would think he would invite all of us to the wedding. And the youngest is 15. So without any delay, I want to let Ali speak to digital transformation and within his own company and his experiences.
Thanks, Balu. And I think it's good to know that a lot of people know about you just by going through your LinkedIn profile and then just read whatever is available out there. So anyway, thanks for that. I think Bala talked a lot about some very common things, and I was just sitting there and then listening to him, and it was resonating so well with what we are doing in oil and gas. So normally oil and gas is very much focused, or people think about oil and gas and they just push it down south towards Houston. People there actually just talk about oil and gas, that's all they deal with. Midland is very close to them as well. And Dallas has always been that, higher end technology, very technocrat here. I used to live in Dallas, by the way. I used to be here, I think I was here for about 9 years or so. Used to work for an oil and gas company at that time but in Dallas. It was called Caltex, joint venture of Chevron Texaco. And Las Colinas was the place where we had the office. Not beautiful place. And then they decided to actually move to Singapore, and I said, no, I don't want to go there. That's when we actually went down south towards Houston. So then in Houston, joined Aspen Technology, tried to actually spin off a company within Aspen Tech when I was there. It was very focused on oil trading. And I think I was talking to someone today and I said, I think we were a little bit ahead of our time at that time. We were providing like online optimization of all the cargoes, because during those days, Euro-grade cargoes used to come in. It is like something that you can mix with something else to form gasoline, right? So at that time, Europe used to export all of those to East Coast in US. And people always used to see what's in my tank, what's on the water, can I combine those two together and make some money off of it when I will be selling it into my regions like, New York or Boston and whatnot. So that's what we used to do at that time. Online optimization, that was awesome, right? And we thought there's a lot of value for our customers there as well. So again, it was all the paradigm that we created. Went to the customer base and said, hey, this is what we got. You can just go online and do this. In like 15 seconds, you'll be able to see whether you should buy this cargo or not. And the traders said, yeah, this is good. But you know what? I have my bookies all over the place. I'll call them up and do the trade. I really don't need it. I don't want, I go online and I see CNN.com, Yahoo.com during those days. But I don't want to do business on that platform at that time. I'm talking about 2003, 2004 timeframe. So I think as Bala mentioned a little bit as well, that the customer readiness along with the customer vision of where they want to go and how they see their business transforming to that point is extremely important to relate this technology to the customer business as well. So anyway, Aspen Technology, great time, went into Honeywell, advanced solutions, software business in Honeywell. Honeywell, as most of you know, actually some of you just know Honeywell as a thermostat provider. My kids used to ask me, why do you have to go and work all day when your company, what it does is just providing those thermostats? So I had to explain them, it's a much bigger company, it's about $40 billion company, so they do a lot more. With Honeywell, again, software business in a hardware environment where they used to sell DCS, the distributed control system. That was a struggle as well. Trying to change the way people think about software, trying to change the way people think about hardware and software relationship, especially in the area where people were just very focused on connecting the analog input, analog output, digital input and digital output. That's all they knew about and that's all they cared about. So moving them into optimization, talking about, hey, we can help you selecting the right crude, selecting the right product, running your businesses or your process units better. We can make you more money. It took a while to get to that point where people started accepting that and they can see that acceptance directly related to their businesses as well. So left Honeywell about 2 years ago and joined Dover, got spun off in May of this year as a new company, Apergy, which was the energy portion or energy portfolio of Dover. And very proud to be the sponsor of this event today, by the way. And thank you. And very humble to be here on the stage in front of all of you. I know there's a huge brain power here that I'm talking to today. So let me just talk about Apergy real quick. So we are an equipment and technology provider to oil and gas. Oil and gas normally has three divisions. One is upstream, which basically takes the oil out of the ground. Midstream, which is basically around distribution, gas and gas handling. And then finally downstream, where you actually convert that into gasoline, all the way to the retail, where you actually pump the gas into your car, along with plastics and petrochem and all of that. Long value chain, we don't want to get into that. But Apergy is very focused on upstream and midstream. And it's a very unique company, by the way. So many companies talk about their vision, and we talk about our vision as well. But I think the thing that I have seen in Apergy with respect to other companies that I work with, we live that vision every day. And our vision is whatever we do, we improve lives of our customers, our colleagues, right, our stakeholders, and also the community that we live in. It's an awesome feeling to get up in the morning and say, the next thing that I'm going to do today when I get to the office is improving somebody's life. Even as a shipping clerk, I put the sticker on the box at the right place with the right information, knowing that somebody who will be receiving it will be able to receive this information properly. It will improve his life, improve the way he actually deals with his life day in and day out. So that's just that feeling is driving the whole culture within Apergy as well. And then Apergy itself is just an economic engine really to drive to that point where we actually improve the lives of all those stakeholders that I talk about. So very proud to be part of that organization, and I think it went public, as I said, on 9th of May. And then, the whole ceremony of opening bell and all of those nice stuff, all very sexy and nice, so that all happened. But that's what we are, that's what we do. And as I said, many characteristics of this organization, and I would say very few of the organizations who are in corporate America, but still have that human touch to it. And that's what I really admire about this company. Okay, let's go to the next one, please. So, IoT or industry or Internet of Things, and then adding one more I to it, which is now industrial IoT or IoT. What does it really mean? If you look at the transformation that the industry has gone through, right? It has been going through multiple technology transformations all the way to 1800s, when the first mechanical loom was invented back in 1800, right? From there, the continuum and the continuous innovation drove this industry from 1.0, and that's what we call it as being a 1.0, all the way to Industry 4.0. Not only there, but they also changed the spelling of industry from IND, instead of ending it with RY, now it is RIE, by the way. So that's Industry 4.0, that's what we are doing these days right now. So from the first loom to our first steam engine, all the way to where we are actually going through a fourth revolution in industrial space. And I think it's a phenomenal change that the industry is actually going through. I mean, I know the manufacturing part of it. I mean, you talk about Germany, you talk about automotives especially. They are way ahead of where we are in oil and gas. But I think the transformation is already happening in different places. Oil and gas traditionally, and is still considered to be a little bit of laggard when it comes to technology adoption. There's always that thing that why do I need to change, and why this hardware software is going to make any difference to my business. I have 3 people who can actually drive a truck around Midland, Texas, and it can go from one tank to the other, to the point that I can just throw a stone onto the tank to hear the noise or the sound of the tank to see if it is empty or it is full. And if I can actually do that, I'm good, right? So that's the mentality that the industry has. And from there, now you are actually moving them into the point where now you are predicting when the pump is going to fail, just because you know the history of the pump, and then you drive, how the pump characteristics are going to change with respect to the flow changes and the pressure changes and so on and so forth. So it's a big change for this industry who has been kind of living into a very basic and fundamentals of operations, right? So, next page. Thank you. So why IIoT or the I derivative of IoT is different from the normal IoTs? In a commercial environment, you can basically get a book like Moby Dick. Pick any page, go through that, doing some analysis. A lot of data analysts are here now. You can do a lot of analysis. You can probably predict the end of the world, right? In IIoT, and I think Bala talked about that as well, in IIoT, you cannot really do that. Refineries can blow if you make a wrong decision, right? People can get killed just by making small wrong decisions. By avoiding one single alarm coming from the DCF, look what happened in BP, Texas City, right? Look what happened in Gulf of Mexico in Deepwater. Avoiding certain parameters and then avoiding some of the alarms and not really paying attention to that could basically cause catastrophic failures. So that's why I think IIoT has a much more risk to it. And that's why you just cannot drive your business on the basis of just pure data. There has to be subject matter expertise that has to sit with it and has to mesh with it in order to make some logical sense out of what we actually produce out of IIoT. So industry is complex, data is complex. Just by having a timestamp data out of any process, it's extremely difficult to make any sense out of it, right? You have to have a very strong context to the data. You have to have a very strong background to how it is connected. And I think that's where people come in. That's where, Joe, who has been working in the oil field for the last 30 years and understands, what the temperature differences mean and how it's going to impact the process, he understands what it really means when things change at the pump suction and pump discharge. I used to work for a company, actually initial days of Caltex. We were revamping a loop plant where they actually used to do, or basically blend lubricants with base oil and some additives. There was an old guy there. We used to call them Baba. So Baba used to sit there where they actually bring the base oil from the tank. And he used to have those big additive drums, 210-liter drums. And he had like 4 or 5 people. They used to tilt the drum. The additive comes into this little pit. And the base oil comes into that and then get mixed into the tank. That's how they were doing the blending. Baba used to just taste the base oil or taste the product coming out and said, no, add that one a little bit more. And then every time we used to take that blend to the lab, it would be on spec. I mean, just amazing. And this is the I would say, the depth of knowledge that people have gathered over the years. Just by tasting it, he would say that it is on spec or not. So those people cannot just vanish away like this, just because we are coming up with some great technology. Those people cannot just go away like this just because we have some data analysts in the room now who can actually make some sense of zeros and ones. That especially in industry, it is more important to have the knowledge of those people embedded into the system that we develop from the technology perspective. And that's why having the business view or not only on the operational side, but also on the overall business side, is so important for the industry of, or the industrial IoT, as they say. Another common business reason driving IoT adoption. I think these are all good buzzwords, and again, I have a team who actually put those slides as well, just like you, Rama. Thank you so much. But there are a few of those that people, again, try to connect how technology is going to impact their business. In oil and gas area, especially with the industrial customers, it all comes down to some basic fundamentals. Number one, what it's going to cost me. And we normally think like, come on, you're talking about technology, and why a $10 or $20 differential is going to make a difference. It does. Especially in upstream oil and gas. When those wells are producing 10, 20, 30 barrels a day, they don't have much room to play around. If they want to put a controller out there which can actually control that nodding donkey you must have seen in Texas a lot, that product that we are providing has to fit into their overall P&L in a way that actually provides more value to them than the cost that they are incurring on day-to-day basis. We went to the customer and said, you know what, you don't even have to pay upfront. We will just make it a subscription model, because that is the common thread these days. Everything is a subscription. So you know what, we will do a subscription model, and we thought customer would just love it, and they say, yeah, bring it on, and I will pay you $30 a month. It doesn't happen that way. Again, the guy who has been working there years and years and years, he, number one, needs to have a firm belief in technology. Number two, he needs to have, see some value out of it. And if he doesn't see the value which corresponds to the cost that he's going to put in, even $30 a month, he is not going to buy it. So that barrier to get into the IoT world is pretty huge. And the adoption rate, especially upstream and midstream oil and gas, is still pretty low when we look into this, as compared to the commercial or the I would say a consumer side of the business. So I think that's a big difference between the two worlds here that we see. Let's go to the next one, please. I just put it together because I knew that I'll be going into this big room of all the Indians out here. This is a quick example of where different businesses require different technology adoption. One thing doesn't fit all, or one size doesn't fit all at all. For example, on the bottom right here, where we say industrial equipment, monitoring a compressor versus monitoring an artificial lift where they actually pull the oil from the ground, right? Two different things. Although both are industry related, both have pretty much the same kind of an operation, right? But the hardware requirement, the software requirement, and all of those things are very different, and it has to be very much related to what kind of business function these equipment are actually providing to the customers. So for generalization in IoT doesn't work. Then moving up from the hardware to connectivity, is still a lot of people don't want to go off-prem. They are not happy with the word cloud. They don't want to adopt it. And and this is the reality. I mean, we are dealing with one of the customer out in Oman, and he said, I don't want to go to the cloud because number one, the data has to stay in Oman, and number two, the data has to stay within my own company solution rather than off-prem solution and all of those other things. So I think the adoption curve for these technologies is different when it comes to different businesses out there, especially in this industrial world. The business models, as I said, are different as well, and the key is that you need to be open. You need to be open to adopt, and you need to be open to see what the customer pain points are, so that your solution can actually answer those problems or those businesses issues that they have. Sometimes customers don't even know what their business problems are, and that is very true. It's kind of strange to say that, but they do know, but sometimes they will never be able to articulate what their business issues are. One of the customers here in US, their analysts actually go out, and then they actually go and check different compressors, right, every day. They drive about 35 million miles every year. Just 7, 8, or whatever the number of analysts. There are about 38 analysts. 35 million miles. Every million mile could actually lead to a major accident, not a fatal accident. I think there are about 1 million. About a 5 million miles corresponds to a fatal accident, something like some analysis like that. But this was a problem that they had, and this is a problem that they will never tell you that they have this problem, and that's why it is so important to understand what the customer issues are and then highlight those. Some are perceived, some are non-perceived as well. So getting deeper into that and finding out exactly what the issues are, and then coming back with what kind of solution that you can provide is the only answer to survive and to actually prosper in this area. Again, different trends in the industry, guys. Are we there yet? No. I think we are just starting, right? Industry adoption is just starting. There's a lot that needs to be learned. There's a lot that needs to be, taught. There's a lot that needs to be adopted as well. As a service provider, technology provider, few things that Bala said as well. Number one, agility, from the perspective of understanding the customer problem and solving the customer problem. And thinking big and acting small is something that is so fundamental in today's economy, and it's so fundamental, especially in IIoT as well, right? Number two, don't try to be doing everything by yourself. You need to have an ecosystem of your partners. You have to. You just cannot do it by yourself, and be open to embrace those partners with you. As I said, every task that you do in industry has to be related with the background, the knowledge base that people have created over years. And as one single company, you just cannot provide it all. So having those relationships, having that open architecture, and having that open business model to be part of an ecosystem, or have people be part of your ecosystem, is also very critical. So that's why, as these different technologies evolve, and I don't know whether blockchain is going to be the part of IIoT or not, or whatever, but I think it's good to know these things, but I think the adoption is always connected back to what the customers are really looking for and what are their business problems that you can actually solve for them. The bottom line impact is important. But at the same time, the more important part is, as I said earlier with respect to Apogee, how can we improve lives of these people? How we can make them, sleep better, spend more time with their families, and basically live a better life rather than just being addicted to their cell phones and addicted to their iWatches and whatnot. So that's all I had. Thank you so much.
Bala, if you would like to come out for a few minutes. So we'll have a Q&A session. And then if you raise your hand, I'm going to come over and give the mic to you. All right, who wants to take the first stab?
Thanks both of you for a great speech, and you enlightened us with all the knowledge. Bala, this question is to you, in fact. So you did speak about online transformation or online experience transformation in AT&T that you're leading. If I may know, is it mostly on the consumer side, or does it apply to all businesses across AT&T? Because in parallel with all the other assets that we are acquiring, even within the telecommunications wing, we have business side and we have the consumer side as well. And not both of them go together very well today. And there's not a unified experience to the customer. What's your take on it?
This looks like a trick question for me. Let's start. I think we're going to start with the consumer first, and then we will go to business.
Okay.
There is a nuance where small business is actually part of the story, but see, large businesses have a much different spin cycle. It's a very different thing. What we are doing, at least within AT&T, is we're leveraging the core capabilities we're building for consumers for large business. But I'm not focused on it right now. I think just with the scale of what we have to get done, we're focused on it. I think just one important point I want to make is digital is not online. I hope all of you know it, right? So online is online, and digital is the set of capabilities, not just for online, but also for what can technology do in the store, what can it do in your home. So it's a binding technology which connects all of them. So sometimes it's always confused with online, but I'm sure all of you know that it's slightly different. Thank you.
Hey Bala, this is Prasad. My question is around, you talked about AT&T and creating a platform for healthcare, just an example. And you also gave very good examples like Asian Paints, Zara, and how they have done in terms of their digital transformation, including Jio. So recently you would have seen Paytm is transforming the payments as well as the financial services sector in India. So any thoughts on AT&T being a financial services provider as well?
Yeah, that's a league. That would be tough for me to answer. I think my legal people will have big problems with that. So look, I think the challenge is, and this is my 2 cents, I'd love to see what Ali thinks about this too. Sometimes the reason I talk about a platform is we have to do what we are good at. And if we try to keep our hands in everything, we are jack of all trades and master of none. I think sometimes we have the problem, we feel like we can do anything just because we have the size. We are a $350 billion company, and it's probably more GDP than half of the countries, right, in the world. But I also think that we're not good at everything, so we have to be focused on a few things, but really build a platform that allows things to come in, which is kind of what you talked about from an ecosystem perspective too. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
No, that is very true. And I think platforms are becoming commoditized as well, even in our areas. And it's about the value, it's about the differentiator, and you cannot be good in everything that you do. You really need to, embrace people who are good at it. And then for the final customer, the real value is what we all do together for them, not only individual that we get.
So I think this question is for both of you. Like, anyone can answer this. Thank you for coming over here and spending your Saturday. My question actually was around the bias that you just talked about. I think it was Bala, about I think Indians being a little more on the techie, not really on the business side. What advice you would give for people over here on that regard? Hopefully I got the question. Okay.
All right, let me try to answer this one. I think it's a bias, and it's also kind of a stereotyping as well. That you see a brown color guy and he must be a techie. And I think what we are doing from a subcontinent perspective, a lot of us are basically driving business, using the technology. I think that's one thing that is pretty unique about what we do in the workplaces, where we bring our technical background, but also provide, I think, a lot of value in running the businesses as well. So the combination of that is a killer combination, and I think we are seeing it. I mean, Bala is here. I've been in this place for a while as well, and I think you can see that this is also changing the perception for Interpath as well.
My only comment I would add is I think you should take the first step towards that. Know what business your team is in, know what business your company is in. Go to the finance person and understand how you make money. Right? Understand what is your top line, what's your bottom line, how does the funding happen, what's your capital allocation model, what's your internal rate of return. Show interest in the business and show interest in who's your customer, what's your segmentation, talk to marketing. So I would say as technologists, sometimes we get so enamored with the technology working on, with this the next Kubernetes middleware we have to build is the most sexiest thing to do. But sometimes just pause and go and actually have a conversation with somebody in legal and find out like what are the problems they are actually facing, what's the lawsuit they're dealing with. I think we should do that, and then all of a sudden you will start to see people respond to you in a much different way, because you're starting to actually ask a question about the business, not about the technology.
It's not green, by the way, it's supposed to be red. My name is Shri. Thank you for sharing your experiences. I really appreciate it. One thing that really interested me is when you are doing the digital transformation in both of your industries, you encountered 2,500 engineers who are focusing on just fixing the e-commerce platform, right? And then they became probably their skills are stale, and it's hard to stay up to date with the technologies because they have a very key function to do. At the same time, on the oil industry as well, they have generations of families working in the industry, and that's their livelihood. Same in the AT&T as well. Families and families are working in the same industry, right? So when you do the digital transformation, it's invariably you're going to bring efficiencies, which results in some attrition, or you have to lose some people, right? Because it's hard to transform them into taking on the new challenges. So what is your strategy to make sure they have a way forward for their livelihood while you are transforming them? By the way, both are great. You're in the great areas. I think IoT for AT&T as a platform, and that digital transformation on the oil industry is extremely important for efficiency of the future. Thank you.
I don't know the answer to that. I think it's a very tough problem. I don't have an answer to you. I really don't. I think this is a fundamental problem we are facing. In my previous life, I opened an office in Seattle, and one of the things I spoke to the governor of Washington is, this is the same question he asked too. You people come in and you do all this work in Seattle, you're getting my money. Now I have people who don't have jobs, and what do I do with them? I don't know. I think this is one of the biggest worries I have as we go into this expansion of technology with AI and artificial intelligence. This is, I think collectively we should all figure out, but I don't have an answer to you right now. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think the same answer from my side as well. They're the party answer that people normally say that, oh yeah, human beings are born to be creative, to be innovative, and that's what they should be doing instead of having a repeated job every day. But the reality is that the volume is in those repeated jobs. So somebody has to do that, and if you have the AI and the machine learning and the machine just doing this, what's going to happen to those people? And there is no good answer to that. Absolutely not.
Check. Yep. So yeah, great speeches by both of you guys. I had questions for both of you. Balu, I see a bunch of things that you're doing, like you're looking at trends in the industry, right? And there's a lot of things happening in the IoT space, oil and natural gas, lots of use cases. How how are you guys looking at drones and stuff? Or how, that thought came to me when you were saying about, traveling. Just a few analysts put in like millions of miles each year, right? So I don't know, are you guys looking at it? Or if you are, what kind of thoughts, if you had something to share?
Yes. Yeah. So we are. I think in oil and gas, especially in gas transmission, the assets are all over the place in the boonies, right? And it's very difficult sometimes to keep track of those. And especially when you have any level of automation out there, then you need to read the status as well. And there was a concept that has been flown around that, okay, we can actually have drones flying over the pipeline to see the integrity, the asset integrity of the pipeline as well. Good concept. I think some people are trying it as well, but I haven't heard much progress on this one yet. My son, he's a mechanical engineer, by the way, that we were talking about, and he is working on drones, but he's working on a drone for a different reason, for with the police department in Austin, actually. So yeah, there are different applications, but I think oil and gas is still struggling with this, and I think the adoption curve is still way to go.
For Bala here, again, a nice talk. When you mentioned there were some interesting conversations you had with different industries around digital transformations, you said Asian Paints did really good things around operations, video operations, right? I just was curious as to if you were able to share a couple of things that you thought were really good that they did there.
So, you mean on operations, or what they did? This is secondhand. I did not talk to Asian Paints directly. From what I heard, one of the things they were able to do is really understand how, once the customers actually order something, and especially in India, the supply chain is very challenging. So they were able to automate where they understood where the product was, how much quantity they had, what is the closest way to get it to them, what's the quickest thing to do. So all of those things which were manual, they were able to automate it. The second thing they also did is, from how do you mix the paint, apparently there's some significant nuance in paint mixing, and they would do it just in time, so the paint quality doesn't get compromised as it goes to the customers. All of them they did basically using digital technologies.
Apologies, because we are running about 45 minutes behind schedule. So we are going to end the Q&A here, and they're going to be available after this to have a conversation, one-on-one conversations. So first of all, thank you so much, Bala. I know he has been moving, and his mowers are at his home for the last 2 days, so he made time to attend this event. And similarly, Ali, he came all the way from Houston. So we appreciate your time, and thank you so much. And Srinivas Karlagada is the president of IACS, and he's going to give a little memento for both Ali and Bala.
This is a small token of presentation. It says Indo-American Community Services Technology Conference, 22nd September in Dallas, presented to Balasubrahmanyam for his dedication and support for the community. And this one goes to for Ali Razan.
The organizing team for this event. I'm here to introduce you the next session. We're going to have a panel discussion. I would like to call upon stage Dr. Shri Rama Rajan. He's an associate professor at the Department of Science at University of Texas at Dallas. He had his PhD from Oregon State University, and he did a postdoctoral fellowship at University of Wisconsin-Madison. And he was associate professor and assistant professor at Indiana University. And his academic credentials are pretty long. So he is doing research on artificial intelligence, machine learning, and statistical learning on AI. So all the speakers here, someone knew someone, and that's how we got all the speakers. When we were looking for a moderator for this panel, we thought it would be better if we get an academic perspective, and he can help moderate the panel. So I was searching who is in UT Dallas who can help us with that, and then Dr. Shriram's name came up, and all I had to do was just tell about IACS and send an email asking him, and he replied very next day saying, yes, I'll be more than happy to be part of the event, but my fall schedule is not ready, so just ping me after 2 more weeks, I'll let you know. And then I pinged him again after 2 more weeks, and here he is. So thank you very much, Doctor. And I would like to call upon Sunil Panlapati. He's a digital transformation leader with a track record of helping companies leverage advanced digital technologies. He's working on IoT, artificial intelligence, machine learning, augmented reality, chatbots, robotic process automation. I don't even know half of what that means. So we are very curious to hear from Sunil. He's a director of IT for emerging technologies at Lennox International. Prakash Pedapudi, he's working as a CTO and SVP of Lennox International. He's also on our executive advisory board for IACS. So he was supposed to come and present here, but he had some work commitments that forced him not to come here. So he was suggesting a few names, and we asked Sunil if he would be willing to come, and Sunil was really helpful in saying, yes, I want to be part of the community and I would like to be here. So thanks so much, Sunil, for next, I would like to call upon Jude Rajan. All he wanted me to say was he's a senior executive at federal government. He doesn't want me to say anything more than that. So I'm not sure if he's going to reveal who he is, but I'll stop at that. Okay. So Sunil is going to talk to us about blockchain. So, I'm sorry. Jude is going to talk to me about blockchain. So we are looking at a lot of blockchain speakers because blockchain is like a big buzzword. We all want to know what it is about. And so we were picking a few speakers, and then we couldn't get for the schedule or their commitments. But Jude was kind enough to accept our invitation and fly in all the way from Washington, D.C. So thanks, Jude. Without further, I'll give it to Dr. Shri Rama.
Hello. So I'm Shri Ram. I really have to admit, when the whole event started, I did feel a little bit out of place. Apologies to Balu and Ali. We professors have to think 6 years for every PhD student. So every grant we write needs to have a 6-year vision. Every problem we think about needs to be 6 years. But the thing that is most heartening, at least from a computer science, artificial intelligence, machine learning. So I'm the director for Center for Machine Learning at UTD, along with Professor Vibhav Gogate. The two of us are the co-directors. From that perspective, it's fascinating and, to be very honest, heartening to get the same message from both the speakers, that they have not yet bought into the AI hype. It's really difficult being a professor. You have to trust me on that. In AI, this is not a great time to be a professor because you get calls from random people. And one of them, I'm just going to say this before we move to the presentation, to talk about how people do not really understand sometimes the problems. This is a big bank, okay? It's not as secretive as the federal bank, but I mean federal government here, but I can't say the name of the bank because I don't have money. They can't, if they sue me, I don't have anything to pay them. So I'm not going to say this, but they called me and actually, would you believe it or not, they were like, oh, professor, we were trying to do this. We bought these GPUs and we invested so many $100,000 in GPUs. Now deep learning doesn't work for us. I'm like, okay, what were you trying to do? And they were like, yeah, we had these blah, 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 blah. And turned out they had like literally 25 data points. And they somehow expected deep learning to work. And so these are the problems, right, with some industry without knowing and just getting bought into the AI hype. So I'm actually really looking forward to discussing with the two of you. And I'm going to keep AI hype as at least one of the questions, being an AI practitioner myself. And so without further ado, we're going to have 10 minutes of presentations from each of them, and then we're going to have basically an open session. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. So I always bring notes. I'm a government official, and I'll talk about a little bit what I'm doing and why I have notes, actually. So and why I'm talking about blockchain. So I am the executive director of health IT at the Social Security Administration. And I'm in charge of, well, first I have to do a couple legal caveats. I'm speaking in my personal capacity, not as my capacity as a government official. Second, why do I know about blockchain? So we'll talk about that first. So I'm also an Army Reservist, so I'm a major in the Army Reserve. And I do work in West Africa, specifically in the Congo, in Kinshasa. And I teach ethics. I'm an Army JAG officer. I teach ethics to the Congolese military lawyers. As part of that work, previous experience, I worked at JP Chase as a lawyer and a compliance officer, so I have experience around Dodd-Frank. You probably know about Dodd-Frank after the global financial crisis. And a small part of Dodd-Frank is section 1502. 1502 talks about conflict minerals from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And so I am in the Congo, and I do work on conflict minerals from that region. So there's 4 minerals that are enumerated in section 1502 of Dodd-Frank. It's tin, tantalum, tungsten, and gold. The 3 T's and gold. And so these minerals are used in electronic supply chains. So as part of my work in the Congo, I got pulled into a group called the Resource Mineral Initiative. And it's a group of tech companies like Microsoft and Google, all the big tech companies, Ford, other big companies. And they work to clear their supply chains from the Congo, because the Congo supplies like all types of minerals, these 3 cobalts and other huge ones from Congo. So they're clearing their supply chains. The main choke point for these minerals are smelters. So they've cleared it to the smelter. That's why so the smelter to the OEM is clear. But the problem is from the smelter to the mine site. So I'm on a work group looking at how to document the supply chains from the mine site to the smelter. And so we're looking at blockchain as part of the Resource Mineral Initiative, and that's how I got involved with blockchain, looking at supply chains from conflict areas and conflict minerals. So the goal is to have a cleared mine site that we insert data points for every inflection point for that mineral as it goes from that smelter, from that mine site to the smelter. And so we're looking at using blockchain to do that, to document those supply chains. So that's how I got involved with blockchain. And so this roadmap about blockchain is very simple, because it's made for people who work at NGOs and Army officers like me who may not know much about tech. I actually do know about tech because I'm Indian, I guess. I don't know. But no, I worked in tech before that. I am a lawyer, so yeah, functionally not great with tech. But I'm also the executive director of health information technology at the Social Security Administration. So in that capacity, I am in charge of all the evidence acquisition for the disability claimant process. So we do all the disability determinations for the entire country. So each year we get 2.5 million claimants for disability, and I'm in charge of this is off the record, about $600 million to bring in evidence. Now we get 16 million pieces of evidence, and only about 1 million is electronic. The rest is in fax and paper. So we are looking at different methods to increase that electronic evidence, and so I'm in charge of that whole task. But on to my points, and that's how I got involved in artificial intelligence. We're looking at using our structured data in that space and using AI to help us to make those disability determinations in a faster and more equitable manner. And that's why I'm very interested in talking about AI. So, but we'll go into my talk here. We'll make this super fast, and it's very simple for folks who don't know much about tech. So we're going to start with the basics. Here's my roadmap. So first I'm going to talk a little bit history, then blockchain basics, then how you write to a blockchain, some blockchain use cases, and then we'll go into the panel discussion. Next slide. So I don't know how much you know about blockchain. I'm sure you know more than most, but it was created by a person named Satoshi Nakamoto. So no one knows who he is. It could be a consortium, could be, I mean, people say it could be Elon Musk, it could be anyone. But he created it, and he has, what do we have here? He has 980,000 Bitcoins, which is worth $6.4 billion. And it's never been spent, and he hasn't been heard from December, since 2010, December. If you go to the next slide. So his seminal work, and this is how he talks about Bitcoin and the backbone, blockchain, is in his paper called Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. And it's a great paper because it's very short, it's only 8 pages long, but it's a remarkable work. I suggest you all look at it. It's at bitcoin.org. Have a look at that. It's very, very interesting paper. So look at the next slide. So Satoshi's goal was to create a digital currency that could not be double spent. So in our current financial model, banks have our money in verified databases. So he wanted to eliminate the bank, that third party that verifies that we have money. And so that was his goal. And he also wanted to reduce the human actors in that whole process. So he wanted to eliminate that third party. To the next slide. And he did that by using this thing called blockchain. Now, blockchain, you could think about it as a database. It's decentralized, it's peer-to-peer, it's very tamper-resistant. And we'll go into how it kind of works, but that's what he used. It's a thing called the blockchain. Next slide. So a blockchain is instead of having a verified database controlled by one party, everyone has a database, everyone has a copy of that database, a node, and has a record of every transaction. A group of transactions is called a block. Those blocks are written to the blockchain. Next slide. And here's a diagram of what that blockchain looks like. So again, a block is a number of transactions, and those blocks are connected through a cryptographic hash. And so that's why it's tamper resistant, because all those blocks are connected. So you cannot mess or hack blocks that are older, because you'll have to hack all the blocks so they're all encrypted and connected together. Next slide. So once a block is written, it cannot be altered retroactively because they're all connected together. And so there's a thing called in Bitcoin called consensus right. So all the nodes, go to the next slide. All the nodes must agree, 51% of the nodes must agree before anything is written to that database. And you've probably heard of this thing called Bitcoin miners. So what happens in Bitcoin is that there's, you race to be the one who writes that block, and you have to do a really hard algorithm math problem. So it takes all this energy. And so the first one to write it writes that block and gets a little piece of Bitcoin, and that's how they pay the miners. They incentivize the miners to write. And it also changes the paradigm of blockchain, changes the paradigm of privacy. In the traditional model, everything's behind the scenes. We don't know what happens at the big banks or JP Morgan with did they have a verified database? We don't know anything about the transactions or how it works. So it's all hidden from us. But in this new paradigm for blockchain, the transactions are all available to the public but the identities of the actors are de-identified. So we don't know who is doing it, but we have a record of all the transactions. Next slide. So there's two types of writing to a blockchain. So Bitcoin uses proof of work. We talked about that a little bit. But in the commercial space, this is what's called a permission blockchain. So you know all the actors or all the nodes who control a node, a copy of that database. Next slide. So this is a permission data blockchain. So you want to have, you have to have an odd number of nodes to write. And so in a write for a permission blockchain, you know all the parties on it, and nothing will be written to that blockchain until all the parties, or to 51%, in this case, 3 of the 5 agree to write that to the blockchain. Next slide. And so in this case, a block was written because 3 out of the 5 agreed that this is a valid block and should be written to the blockchain. Next slide. So some of the advantages of using blockchain over the traditional verified database is that in a traditional database, there could be a single point of failure. There may not be multiple copies. Not a huge issue now with cloud computing, but that was always an issue when there was always one database. They're also very authenticated because we don't know who's actually controls the transactions because they're all de-identified. It's very auditable because every transaction is available to the public. So an auditor can look through every transaction. So that's a key feature of it, and it's tamper-proof. Next slide. And we'll talk a bit about some blockchain applications. I talked a little bit about my work in Congo using blockchain documenting conflict minerals. So that's a great use case, supply chains. Another great one is in the financial sector. We'll talk about that a bit. Identity management and voting. Next slide. Yeah, this one. So a great use case I've seen is in the Republic of Georgia. They use it for land titles. So oftentimes in developing countries, you probably know this from India, that the official in charge of the title may move the land, change the title because he's bribed or some other reason. So it's a huge deal. So there's a pilot in the Republic of Georgia where they're using blockchain, putting all the titles on blockchain. So it's in an immutable database. So it controls that corruption. And there's actually a pilot in the state of Karnataka right now about using blockchain to do title documentation. Next slide. MIT is developing a blockchain use case for certification for putting their diplomas through a blockchain. So you can use an API to check to see if someone actually graduated from MIT. So that's a great use case. Certification is a great use case for blockchain. So we talked about supply chains a little bit, and one of the best supply chain use case I've seen is Everledger. This is again in the conflict mineral space. So Everledger, they've documented almost at this point 2 million diamonds on the blockchain. They put all the attributes on the blockchain, and they actually even put a digital encrypted or laser certificate on the diamond. So you can take that number and trace that diamond all the way from the mine site to the refinement to the OEM. So it's a great way to check to see if your diamond is conflict-free, and it's reduced conflict trading in diamonds. So that's a wonderful use case, and it's been really helpful for the economies, the export economies with diamonds. Next slide. So Everledger uses a technology called Hyperledger. So Hyperledger Fabric, it's part of the Linux Foundation, and Hyperledger is JP Morgan, all the big banks, other big companies are part of this Hyperledger Fabric. So it's a standard platform for blockchain solutions. And I would check out that website. If you're interested in blockchain, check out Hyperledger. It's just, they have amazing tools there that are available to the public. Next slide. This is JP Morgan. They've invested very much into blockchain, and I'll talk about one use case for blockchain in trading. So they've reduced. So in a typical trade, let's say JP Morgan wants to send 1,000 euros to Bank of America. In a traditional manner, they'd have a third party who would take a small cut of that trade to verify that trade. So JP Morgan, other banks have created this system where there's nodes, and so JP Morgan will send, let's say, 1,000 euros. They'll write to the blockchain, send 1,000 euros over. Bank of America will see that they received the blockchain, and they'll also write that they've received that 1,000 euros. And it eliminates that third party verifier, and eliminates that trading cost for those banks. Next slide. So there's a convergence now I see with blockchain, IoT, and AI. So all blockchain is, it's a structured database. It's a different sort of than a traditional database, the traditional RDBMS, but it's structured data. So structured data can be used and automated through AI. Next slide. So one of the best use cases I've seen is with autonomous cars. So a car has tons of IoT and is gathering so much data. You could write that to a blockchain, and that could be analyzed through AI. With GDPR and some of the new privacy laws in Europe, the consumer may need to own some of that data that's created by those cars. And so the blockchain is a great method for that, because that owner can be identified by a hex, and they can query the data, and also the company can also query that data. So it gives access to both the consumer and the car owner. I mean, the company that owns the car, like Tesla. And here's my contact if you have any questions about this. I'm happy to talk about it, and thank you.
As the Director of Advanced and Emerging Technologies. Today I wanted to focus on a couple of things, a couple of technologies and how we are leveraging them. One is AI, the other is augmented reality, or it may also be known as mixed reality. Right, just to give you some background, Linux is a HVAC company, which means ACs. We are like Carrier, but we pride ourselves to be much more advanced, having a much more advanced equipment than Carrier, so we are a bit on the premium side in the HVAC segment, while Carrier is more mid-market. So, to give you a background, as part of that, we are a B2B company, and we are trying to transform ourselves into a B2C company as well, right? As the first part of it is digital experience and digital transformation, right? What does that mean? We obsess very much about our customers, right? Two things, one is customers, the second is employees. Those are the two areas where we want to give an outstanding user experience for both employees and customers. As part of that, from on the employee side, we have about 7 factories worldwide where we have thousands of workers working in factories, churning out equipment every day. And some of these employees are seasonal workers. They come into the factory, they work for a couple of months, and then they leave. But you know how a factory setting looks like, right? You can get into accidents that can be very costly for the company and also very damaging for the employee itself. So one of the biggest focus areas for us is safety training in the factories. That is where we decided to use augmented reality, where we train the employees, especially the seasonal ones, when they come into the factory, right? We don't want them previously how we used to do it is, we used to have a whole factory line up, mocked up, just like a regular line, and we used to train them on that line. But now what we're doing is, we are helping them use augmented reality. What the factory worker does is, wears a headset and goes through the entire training. And the difference between virtual reality and augmented reality is, virtual reality, you don't actually react or interact with the regular world. Augmented reality, you can actually interact with the physical world while you are wearing the glasses. So what we did is, today we train them on the augmented reality glasses. They know how to operate the equipment, or how to walk around with a basic safety training that you need to undergo when you go into a factory setting. So that's one of the areas. And if you can flip to the next slide. The other one is, we actually, you can skip one more. You can actually train the assembly workers using augmented reality on how to put together a complete unit step by step. So that's what we are doing using these technology with augmented reality. And one of our biggest partners in this area has been Microsoft. I don't know how many of you have seen Hololens. Show of hands, Hololens, yeah. So HoloLens is a mixed reality headset, right? You can wearing the HoloLens, you can interact with the physical world while you see data on your headset. If you can move to the next one. Field service, this is another one. If any one of you who has an AC repair, you would have known how that customer experience looks like, right? You have an AC repair technician come to your house, they're at the back of the house fixing the AC. But right now what they can do is if they have a problem, they call their dealership or they call us and we try to help them. They're holding up an iPhone, showing what is going on with the equipment. All that is gone now. What we do now is have our dealers wear the headset. They're actually transmitting back the image to our expert engineers who are sitting in the headquarters, and we are guiding them. We are seeing what they are seeing through the headset. And sitting in the head office, we can actually annotate it and show them where exactly and what exactly to do on the equipment. So that's how we are using augmented reality in the field service area. So you will see very quickly as this thing is adopted, a lot of your AC techs, especially from Linux coming home, will be always wearing a augmented reality headset. Right? That's exactly why they use it for, in order to get expert training or expert advice from the headquarters. If you can do. And the next one is classroom training. We have 20,000 dealers. What we do is we bring all of their employees, the technicians into our head office. Every time we have a new model, we sit them in a room for 2 days. We make them go through training and certification. We are also a big retail company. We have about 220 retail shops, retail stores. What we do, and we have a retail store pretty much within a 30-mile radius of major US, anywhere in the US within 30-mile radius you'll find a Linux store. So what we do today, and these dealers are small, they have like 6 technicians or 5 technicians. They can't afford 2 days flying into Dallas, take a training, and then go back and try to apply the training. So what we do today is have them come into our store. We have a setup where they can actually wear the headset, and we train them on the new equipment right there. So they don't lose a lot of time or spend a lot of money on just getting training. So that's proving very, very, very effective for us on the augmented reality side, and very time saving, a lot of value addition to our dealers. And when we say dealers, that's our customers. We are a B2B company. That customer experience, the value we are realizing out of that is really good. Now I'll switch tracks and go to artificial intelligence. I know we have a panel discussion coming. I'll keep it brief. Basically, we see the next 2-3 years, we have actually spent significant resources and time on artificial intelligence, building up our capabilities. But we'll be doing more of that in the next couple of years. And I don't think we are the only ones in the industry doing that. You'll see pretty much every company out there putting in a lot of resources on AI. Like the Bala alluded, it's not about replacing workers. We look at it as how do you make them more effective, right? In our company today or any other company I work for, business, the way they operate is they look at a report or a dashboard. All that is doing is telling you what happened yesterday or last week. With AI, we are changing the paradigm. We are actually telling them what is going to happen tomorrow, right? That's exactly, most of the use cases are on that. If you take the second item on the slide, and I'll let you read the slide, I won't go through it. Let's start at the top, chatbots, right? We introduced chatbots. These are natural language processing capability in them, and they can detect my intent. When I chat with you, or SMS you, or email you, my chatbot agent can know what exactly I'm asking for. It's that sophisticated now, right? So introducing chatbots, what we have been able to do is the previous customer interaction that used to take an average of 20 minutes, today is solved in approximately 4 to 5 minutes. No human interaction. The bot is telling the customer what exactly they need to know. They don't have to get on a phone, wait in queue, nothing. Chatbots are automated. There is no limit on how many you can have, and they are able to work 24 hours a day, and they are able to get my customer more customer satisfaction than a real agent can, right? But that doesn't mean I'm replacing agents. My agents today are actually spending their quality time answering high-value questions rather than low. Chatbots are actually taking away the 80% of the work that's low value. The 20% is left to a real agent, an advanced engineer who can actually answer questions of HVAC, about HVAC, which bot is not currently able to handle, but we want the bot to handle that also in the future, leaving our agents to handle the top 5% of the customer calls only. Right? So now that's NLP, one of the areas of artificial intelligence. The next was pattern recognition, which is where we put most of our efforts on. Traditional methods of reporting, analyzing data, all that doesn't give you enough about what your customer base looks like. Using pattern recognition, we are able to go identify new customers. We are actually now able to predict when a customer is going to leave us. They are showing all the signs of actually stop being, or they're dissatisfied with us. We have data points that are able to accurately predict. Today we are able to, with 85 to 90% certainty, predict when a customer is going to leave us, giving us 2 months to a month advance warning so that we can take corrective action. So same thing with engineering. We are a big IoT shop. We have thousands of devices, thermostats sitting in people's homes, transmitting data every day. Today, or last 2 years, or 5 years, we used to get all this data, and then we are struggling to figure out what to do with that. Today, we moved to a clickstream model. We take the data streaming out of your thermostat. We know when a customer Bala is going to get home. His pattern is he gets home around 7 o'clock. So I tell the thermostat, hey, Bala likes the thermostat to be at 72, set it to 72. Bala leaves office at 7, takes 40 minutes to get home. By 7:40, I have the thermostat set to the right temperature that the customer needs. Sorry, Bala, I used to use you as a customer. But that's what we are using AI for. We are predicting what a customer needs, right? And when the customer is going to get home, what temperature the customer likes. With Nest, we can't do much. Nest only knows when you're home and it will set it to 72 when you're home. We actually know your patterns, your lifestyle, or when you're on vacation. If we see a ticket booking email with your name on the itinerary, we make sure that we don't. Sorry, we don't want to get too much into the details. Some of these make you uncomfortable, but hey, look, everybody in the world, today's algorithms can process massive amounts of data. There's no limitation. I leave it at that. But those are some use cases I just want to give you an insight into, and leave it at that and go to the next panel discussion.
Thank you. I think I have probably the most uncomfortable job here, which is to have a discussion before dinner. So literally, I'm holding the mic between you guys and dinner. So let's keep it interesting. One question I want to ask, and this is actually to many of the guys here, but mainly the two of you, is when we think of evaluating, let's say, new technology that comes in, how do you measure success? I mean, how do you measure if some new technology that you brought in, and let me stick to my strength, which is AI and machine learning, how do you measure success? Because let me give you a 30-second preview of why this is important. I was giving a talk to the Air Force Research Lab just on Tuesday, and when we were talking about this, it was very clear that, let's say you develop an algorithm which predicts with a 99.999% accuracy whether somebody is a terrorist, okay? 99.999% accuracy. Then the simple answer is, ooh, that's great. But it's not, because the prior probability of anybody being terrorist is less than 0.000001. Like 1 in a billion is probably a terrorist. So with that probability, 99.9999 means, as a machine learning guy, I know that you're just simply writing a code that says, if this is a person, then not a terrorist. Will get you 99.99 right. So we know that measures don't work, right? So for instance, if I'm predicting terrorist, getting that one person who's a terrorist is very important. And in the technology terms, you call it recall. In medicine, you call it specificity. And then in LinkedIn, today morning I got an email saying, there are 10 recommendations for you. And the first one was postdoctoral research associate. And my first thought was, I've been there, I've done that. I've done my time. That was 9 years back. And then the second one was Research Associate, Precision Health Initiative, Indiana University. The funny thing is, I'm the PI of that grant. And I'm getting this, right? So what is LinkedIn doing? LinkedIn is thinking anything that is relevant to my keyword is important. So this is called precision, right? So the point is that clearly the evaluation metrics are not correct. And so my question to you guys is, how do you evaluate success outside the myopic sales has gone up, revenue has gone up in the next 3 months, or in the last 3 months and so on? How do you evaluate success?
So I talked about my job. I'm in charge of evidence acquisition for the disability process. And so we're using AI and different techniques for AI for disability determinations. So our end result success is that we can make disability determinations faster. So I'm into public service. I'm here to serve the public. So I look at our end state. Our end state goal is to make sure that we make equitable decisions in disability, and we make those decisions faster. And that's how we score AI. We get those claimants paid, and we get them in a better position.
Yeah, to answer your question, I mean, we are a for-profit company, obviously, but that still doesn't mean a KPI is always measured in terms of revenue or profitability. It can be a lot of other things like customer satisfaction or a value-added service that you provide. So especially in the advanced and emerging technology space, it kind of becomes hard to measure KPI in terms of the older methods or the older KPI models, which is revenue or sales. So we usually tend to focus on customer satisfaction, good customer experience or employee experience in that model. So you will see the industry changing a lot in that perspective. It's no more just a revenue-based KPI model.
The next question is, in this current hype, one of the hype that people have all the time is the necessity for being explainable. And I'm saying this because there's a lot of funding from government to us on what we call as explainable models. The joke that we have is that explainable models have been around for 40 years. Actually, the most explainable models are 40 years old now. So my question, but let's say I talk to an oncologist, because I work a lot in healthcare. I work with UT Southwestern and many hospitals across the country. And the first thing they say is, Shri, if you are telling me that the recommendation that you're making, the drug interaction that you make is going to save a life, do I really care about explainability, right? But this hype is now taking everyone to think about maybe explainable problems, right? So do you see the explainability as a criteria in your I guess in your problems?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, to your stakeholders, they can be your shareholders, or to your customers. Explainability shows that you care, right? That's the most important criteria if you want to be long-term in the marketplace with some credibility. Or the customers are never going to stick with you, right? It's in my interest, or any public company's interest, to have explainability as one of their prime stories to tell to the customers. Without that, you don't have a long-term story. Otherwise, you got it all wrong. You're focused on the short term, right? Whether it's healthcare or anything else you do, without that major goal, you're not going to. It's not feasible to have a long-term strategy as a company.
Yeah, so explainability is a huge deal in my domain in healthcare and disability determinations, because every claimant has a right to appeal, right? So I have to explain, if we have an AI, we have to explain how did that AI make that decision. I can't put that AI on the stand, so we have to have some kind of method to explain how that decision was made.
So that naturally brings my next question, which is, what are the frustrations that you have seen in adopting AI, machine learning, IoT, blockchains in your domains? What are the challenges that you've seen in your firms?
So I think the challenges for us is, first, we can't be experts in everything, because we just can't. It's impossible for the Social Security Administration to be the expert in artificial intelligence. government was once the leaders in technology, and we're not anymore. It's definitely in the private sector, leaders in technology. So we try to work with companies and universities that have that knowledge base. So that's how we do. We try to team with the best companies and the best universities that can help us with these issues.
And so the positive side, what is the biggest contribution of these recent advances, the different technologies that you guys saw? Again, apart from the fact that the revenue has gone up, like maybe the customer satisfaction has gone up, but what has it improved? So from a societal question that I have is one of the points that they were asking me, and this was in Belgrade, in one of the television interviews, they were asking me this point of question: will you ever, because of the use of AI, come to the point where you have a 4-day week for the employees in the US? As you guys know, employees in the US work actually more than many other countries. And so the question that I ask for you guys is, do you envision something like that? Do you see that AI, machine learning, automation, like blockchain and all these stuff is going to maybe reduce the burden, which basically makes us more effective and efficient? Where do you see this?
Well, I definitely see it disrupting a lot of industries, right, and people and their lifestyles, especially to address your question. If AI is used to its full potential, right, whether it's my company or anywhere else, it's definitely going to help an employee save 20% of their time, rather than looking at reports and dashboards like I was alluding to, rather than focus on the forward looking. But then, growing up, I'll give you an example. My dad used to work for a public sector company, right? He used to work for a public sector bank. When I was in 10th grade, they were going on strike. And I asked, Dad, why are you guys going on strike? And they said, no, they're going to introduce computers. It's going to drive us all out of a job. Fast forward 30 years. My dad is on Facebook, Twitter, and you're like, come on, man, you can't get enough of computers now. It's like, and what has it done to the Indian banking industry? Nothing. It has only made it more empowering to the people. So half of these might be more scaremongering, and people just don't know what to expect out of it. But in my experience, especially coming in from the South Asian subcontinent, I have only seen the positives of technology being adopted. I'm an optimist, so I remain optimistic about the AI space as well.
More power, and we just can't fire people. It just doesn't work like that. So it's going to be a huge issue. We'll have to retraining. It's a big deal for us. If it does reduce the timing for disability determinations, what do these people do? So that's a huge issue for us. And we talked about that a little bit, but it's something our country has to deal with.
One final question from me before we go to the general audience. I was told that there are some students and some people here who are also thinking about how to change careers and so on. So what specific skill sets would you envision as being extremely hireable at this point, that the people who are looking for new opportunities could avail?
Yeah, so I interview a lot of people, and this is what I look for. So I like people with diverse interests. For example, if you're a techie, if you're interested in something else, like you're good in languages or you like to dance, I think it's really important to have that broad perspective. Because if you only can do one thing, you become very myopic, and it's a huge issue because you can't distinguish the forest from the trees. So I think it's just important to have diverse interests and just read things out of your subject area, like read philosophy or read something else that's like about evolution or biology, but get out of your field so that you expand your knowledge. And I think the most innovation comes when you look outside your field. I think that's really important.
Well, I'll take your question a little different. If somebody is looking to be, what skill sets do I acquire? In our company or in others, the one trend I've seen is alluding to what he was saying as well. We are looking for a more broad-based personality coming in, not just limited to, of course, data science. I need you to know algorithms. I need to know you to know what a linear regression means and all those other AIs. Related topics, but I also am looking at somebody who is much more, not just that skill set, but it's much referring to him, who are interested in how this impacts the company, what is the bottom line for the company, how does it add value. So it's not just a single skill set like, hey, I want an ML expert, right?
So maybe we'll open it up for the general audience questions.
Who wants to go first? Who wants to go first?
Yes, my name is Vijay Bala. I own a company called TechPath. I have a question. Since you know about IoT and AI, maybe you saw those regions from satellite view. So my question is, if a company want to enter, what to choose? Because if I see a lot of companies like a lot of companies like the majority of the companies, they are developing the IoT products. And other side, there is huge demand towards the AI. So if I want to choose, where should I start?
Well, that's a tough one to answer, to give you business advice as to how to run your company or where to focus. But looking at the marketplace, I'll take it this way, just so IoT, I see a lot of, from my consulting experience, we see a lot of action there. The natural progression for IoT, the next progression in the IoT space is AI. So I don't see them as two different things that you need to pick and choose from. As your company's skill set or your product's capabilities span both AI, IoT first and then transition into the AI, I think that's a normal progression. I don't see one versus the other. Or I didn't know if you meant them as an example technologies or it was specific to those two. I took it as specific and I don't see them as different. It's the same progression from IoT to AI.
Okay. I got it. Thank you very much, Sunil.
A question around blockchain. Mentioned, there are a couple of use cases that mentioned. Those are interesting, especially in your area, like the conflict minerals, right, and social security, disability stuff. So blockchain. One of the questions was more technical around like just the performance and scaling aspects of blockchain, right? Autonomous vehicles, for example, is just a lot of scale, right? And when you do this kind of transactions, that was one thing. But also in Social Security Administration, you talked a little bit about blockchain. Are you also looking at AI, ML kind of angles there?
Oh, sure. So that's true. Blockchain throughput is not fast, so it's, but it is tamper resistant. So that's a huge deal. So I think one way you get around that is by using pointers to the data where you actually have the data rest, and blockchain will just have the pointers. That's how I've seen that problem solved. But throughput on blockchain is definitely a huge issue. In the conflict mineral use case, that throughput is not a huge deal for us. We're writing to a blockchain. We just want to make sure it's immutable and that we can rely on the data that's put into the blockchain. So that throughput is not a huge deal for us. So we don't use blockchain yet in Social Security Administration. There's a number of government agencies that are looking at using blockchain. One thing that we're looking at in the healthcare space is credentialing. So medical doctors could have all their credentials on blockchain, and that could be queried by anyone. And then also for a record locator service. So it's a huge deal for us to figure out where's the DNS for us to go and connect with that healthcare provider, and how do we get their records? There's no universal service for that, so we're looking at maybe the whole industry itself is looking for possibly some blockchain solutions.
Hello. Yeah, I have a question like where Sunil was saying, giving an example where the predictive technology can set the temperature at home and also can figure out like if somebody is going on a trip out of town, it can be changed. So I believe like this technology is there since a long time, but the legal aspect or the legal framework is one which is limiting it. This being coming out into the customer area. So where do we stand now from the legal point of view? Like recently also we have seen the Facebook on the privacy laws, and we have seen hearing in Great Britain the privacy laws have been changed and all these things. So where do we stand on the legal point of view, framework point of view?
Well, I'll start off by saying I'm not a legal expert, but I'll take the question as more from a technology standpoint, or as more a commercial company offering a product standpoint, right? Earlier, Professor was talking about the explainability. Being transparent about what exactly a product is going to do is a starting point for every company. But having said that, it's a double-edged sword. You can't explain all that you do to a common man, right? If I want you to buy my iPhone, I can't begin to start explaining to you what all the iPhone does. If you really look, and some people get scared when they see all the things that an iPhone or a Google, Android, or all these companies and the amount of data they gather on you, you get scared. So what are you going to explain about this without turning off people? So it's a very complex problem that everybody is currently facing, how to make it explainable enough so that you can run a commercial company, without scaring off customers on the one hand. I think that problem is going to be around for a while, and I really don't have, or don't see a way let me put it this way. I don't know, I'm interested as well to watch how companies handle this issue, right? How far you go on the explainable path, and where exactly do you stop explaining, or do you go whole hog? I haven't seen a single tech company that has explained everything they do so far. None.
And just to add on that, actually a couple of things, maybe one question, one thing. It's also not possible to explain all the models. Exactly. Because sometimes even the models don't really know why they pick something. Like if I'm running a deep neural network and something happens in my 17th convolution layer, there's no way I'm going to understand why this is happening. I can create equivalent models, I can come up with some explanations, but they are really scratching the surface in some cases. So it's also the question of how complex a model is. And but one thing that question actually brought me to mind was, this is a question that I'm always asked if I'm interviewed from the media in particular. And the question is always around ethics and not just legal, right? And so what is ethical, right? So we academics are kind of having a free pass on that, because we can basically say we are controlled by these ethic behavior, that's what we are doing. We are not collecting any data that without your permission. Actually, the funny thing is we developed a grid world domain where somebody was just walking around collecting prices. And if I have to do a user experiment on that, I have to spend 3 hours of my time writing a proposal to the IRB who looks at it. And so for me to collect any data is actually, I have to go through a lot of ethical things. But your example, particularly Balu leaving at 7 o'clock and reaching 7:40 can raise a lot of flags. So, how do you guys think about ethics?
Well, just to clarify, we don't do that today, right? I want to make that very clear. No ambiguity there. We don't do that today. That was an example. But there are technologies, especially with Nest, right, or other products, the capabilities are there. The data is coming in, We can see the data, we can correlate it with other data where we see what's going on in your email schedule. We can put easily, theoretically, you can put 2 and 2 together and make products work better for customers. Okay, but on the other side of the coin is the privacy aspect of it, right? So again, so I'll finish off with saying, reiterating, we don't do it today.
Want to add anything?
So I worked in, I'm an ethics attorney by training. I worked in the Army for 4 years as an ethics attorney. So ethics is a huge deal for us. And I'll speak to my DoD experience. We have work groups looking at AI and ethics and what is the intersection and what are the ethical models for artificial intelligence. It's really important, obviously, in the defense space because we can make anything autonomous and make decisions for firing weapons, so it's a huge deal for us.
I think we have more questions. One more? Okay, one more question.
I guess this is the last one and the lucky one. So I think just to go back on the privacy concerns, because of the different mix of the panel here, my question is around, do you think an approach done by GDPR, like the European Union, will help, at least for the United States, when it comes to data privacy, or you believe in the private sector China taking the ethical high ground?
So, I mean, this is me personally speaking, I think GDPR is pretty overreaching, and I think there's different countries have different comfortability with how much data they release, and also it depends on your age, actually, too. The younger you are, I don't really care if your data is released. I think it's a really nascent area, and I don't think there should be too much regulation on the space right now. I think all of your companies, if you're doing any business in Europe, you're going to have to comply with GDPR, and so those rules will be de facto rules in America. And I see that the EU could be pushing a lot of these privacy laws, and we're going to just have to accommodate those rules if we want to work with Europe. So I think they may be the entity that's going to push those privacy rules. I think the US is more lax and more open to companies using their own internal ethical policies around privacy.
Yeah, and also, well, it's not just GDPR. California just passed a law that closely follows GDPR, but it doesn't kick in until 2020 or 2021, one of those 2 years. I think we have some time, but a lot of states are following California as well. New Hampshire, Massachusetts, states like that. We expect them to follow the California law, if not the GDPR law. So companies need to get ready for those kind of scrutiny and capabilities to forget somebody, delete the records when asked, things like that.
So do you think that this is because of a misunderstanding of what the technologies or just a fear of what the technologies could bring in terms of privacy? A classic example, again, going back to healthcare, is Marty Tannenbaum, who's incidentally one of the founders of AI, the AAAI, the Advancement of AI Society. He's a cancer survivor. And he makes a point every time we talk about privacy, he's like, I survived cancer. If 20 years back somebody told me, give me your data, I'm going to mine it and figure out how to cure your cancer. I really don't care about privacy. And so he makes this argument, and he actually showed, this is in 2010, we drafted a document where he basically had signatures from over 250 people who have acute cancer, acute melanoma, saying we don't really care about privacy, take our data, do what you want, right? From healthcare in particular, where I think privacy is important. Because on another side, we predict heart attacks, and actually, maybe a flash news is, we can predict heart attacks in your 50s by looking data between your 18 and 30. Just between looking at the 12 years of data between 18 and 30, we can predict heart attack in your 50s with like 85 to 90% accuracy. And this is in very, very good balanced data. So if I put this model out though, that becomes the pre-existing conditions. Insurance can charge you more for the 20 years of your life. So there's always this balance that when you think about privacy. So I think that's a great question in terms of Should it be enforced? In some cases, it seems like it should be. You don't want to publish some things, and in other cases, it's pretty subjective.
So I'll speak to healthcare real quick. So I think there's two issues. It's your personal data, like your personal health data. I can see there's HIPAA and there's protections. I get it. But we're looking at aggregating your data and using that. So there's different models that we're looking to use. We can make synthetic data. So we can use synthetic data sets or aggregation of data sets to do that deep learning in the healthcare space. And so I think that's one way you can get around with that personal data. But I think HIPAA is definitely a huge issue when it comes to those issues. So.
So thank you, Jude and Sunil. Thank you so much.
Thank you to our wonderful panel. So Dr. Shri Rajan and Sunil Bundalpati and Jude. Jude actually flew all the way from Washington DC. We were kind of a little nervous this morning trying to figure out if his flight is going to make it or not with all the rain that is going on. So I appreciate you flying all the way down, and Sunil and Dr. Sriram, thank you so much. I know you're busy. You have a very busy schedule. In fact, Dr. Sriram has been traveling quite a bit, and he was traveling internationally yesterday, right? So he just came in, and then before his jet lag is all done, he was here, and then he was able to moderate the panel. Thank you so much. And then I would like to request Mr. Ashish Julka. He's a Senior VP of Tech Mahindra to come in and give closing remarks.
All right, thank you so much. So I have the privilege of delivering a vote of thanks and also holding you from the dinner outside. So I will be quick, but do you have my slides? It's okay. I don't have any slides. Okay. All right. No, it's been an awesome presentation. I mean, I came, honestly, I must admit, I came in here thinking we'll meet some great people. We will have some good wine and eat some chicken 65. But the bytes that we got here were megabytes, terabytes, petabytes, great information, great session. Ali, the whole IoT information that you shared with us, and by the way, we want the number of that Baba, okay? Then we'll see how we can use AI for that. Bala has gone back, unfortunately he was a little under the weather, so he had to leave. But we all really saw the customer experience and the focus on that AT&T is at. Actually, I want to ask him offline, it took him 5 years to transform Best Buy. How long will it take AT&T, right? So maybe we'll get the answer sometime. And Jude and Sunil, great insights on blockchain. Thanks for that experience. And Shriram, thank you very much. So just quickly, I'm in Tech Mahindra, and when Srinivas invited us to be here, along with my colleague Prasad, who's sitting over there. Basically, we are into the technology business, IT consulting, system integration, and just coincidentally, this past week, this Thursday, Forbes announced the top global 100 digital companies, and Tech Mahindra is the only non-US company in the top 20. So this was a great coincidence to be here at this event over here. So thank you so much for having us over here. We are, in the US, Dallas is our headquarters, so we are always looking forward to doing some corporate social responsibility activities. We're involved in a lot of activities over here, and it's just great to be over here and amongst you all. So thank you very much, and I think back to you, or can I just let them go to have dinner? No? All right, thank you so much, guys.
We're almost done. So first of all, thank you all for coming in. I also want to thank our wonderful sponsors, Tech Mahindra, Manas Consulting, Arvind Niranjan, right here. And all of you for coming in this rain. And the next events we are going to publish on our website. You can check our website regularly. Since you came in here, your email is with us, so you will receive some email communication also. So we are going to have some networking events next year, most likely. Not sure about this year, but next year definitely we'll have about 4 events. So Srinivas Katragada, you want to come over for a second? And I also want to thank all the IACS team in Dallas. Can you all stand up? Balaji, I see you're sitting. Balaji, Ramurthy, Prasad, they're responsible for food. Mac, he's responsible for audio. And Balu, Ravi, Balu is responsible for everything. Ravi is responsible for photography and videography. Vivek and Ram, he is the one who found this venue. And then Shrikant Patel, I know Sumant left, he had to go. Shrikant and Sumant are the ones who coordinated the icebreakers. And where is Ganesh? Ganesh has been here and he has been partnering with me from pretty much end to end. So, come over. And Balu, please bring over Niranjan. So, a great job all the volunteers, thank you so much. So, without your help, this would not have been done.
Okay, it says Indo-American Community Services Technology Conference, 22nd September 2018, Dallas, Texas, presented to Dr. Shri Rajan in recognition of outstanding dedication and support for the community. And this is for Sunil Bandalapati. And for Jude Sounder. Just, we have a few other sponsors. Another grant sponsor for this event is Aparji. Thank you for sponsoring. Over ITW and Sunoco, thanks for their support as well.
And before you forget, I know everybody got a form during your icebreakers. If you put the form in the little box outside, we're going to do a lucky drawing and we're going to pick some winners who are going to get free entry into the next event. So don't forget that. Thank you all. Have a pleasant evening and enjoy the dinner.